Everything was done by the book. That was the phrase they kept repeating, calmly, confidently, as if those words were meant to comfort me. They didn't. If this story is touching you, comment below where you're watching from and what time it is there. Because when everything is done by the book, there's no margin left for mercy. I used to believe that phrase meant safety, that it meant order, that it meant someone somewhere had checked the outcome for fairness. I didn't know it could also mean that no one was responsible for what came next. My situation didn't begin with a warning. It began with routine, a review, an update, a process that needed to be completed. I didn't resist it. Why would I? People who follow the rules don't fear procedures. I gathered documents, answered emails, showed up on time. I spoke respectfully. I trusted professionalism. Everyone involved was polite. That detail matters. No one threatened me. No one accused me of wrongdoing. No one raised their voice. They didn't need to. The language they used was neutral, sanitized. Words like compliance, alignment, protocol, none of them sounded dangerous. At first, nothing changed. Then something small did. Access restricted, responsibilities adjusted. A temporary measure, they said. Temporary is one of the most dangerous words in institutional language. It has no deadline. I asked if there was a concern. They said no. I asked if I should worry. They said absolutely not. Everything was being handled by the book. That book, I learned, has no chapter for emotional consequence. The next step arrived quietly. Another notice, another procedural update, another adjustment that reduced my involvement. I was still informed, still copied on emails, but no longer asked. That shift is subtle. You don't feel it immediately. It registers later when you realize decisions have been made without you, and no one thought to tell you why. I requested clarification. They provided documentation, policies, citations, everything immaculate, everything correct. I searched for my name in those documents. It appeared only as a reference, not as a presence. That was the moment I felt the first real fear. Not panic, displacement. I consulted a lawyer. He reviewed everything carefully, then leaned back and said the sentence that would echo for years. Everything was done by the book. I waited for the follow-up, the part where he told me how to fix it. It didn't come. He explained that the process had been executed properly, that there were no violations, that appeals were possible but unlikely to succeed. Why? I asked. Because nothing improper occurred. Improper. As if harm only exists when rules are broken. The cutoff didn't happen all at once. That would have been too obvious, too humane. Instead, it unfolded gradually. Permissions removed, opportunities reassigned, communication filtered. I was still present, technically, but functionally disconnected. People began referring to decisions as already finalized. I heard about outcomes after they were implemented. I asked when this had been decided. They said during review. I asked why I wasn't included. They said it wasn't required. That's how you disappear, not by being removed, but by no longer being required. I followed every remaining instruction because resistance would only justify further exclusion. Silence became my strategy, compliance my defense, but silence is often interpreted as consent. The cutoff became official without ceremony. A final notice, brief, polite. It thanked me for my cooperation. As if I had chosen this. I was told this was not personal, that it was structural, that it was necessary for alignment. Alignment with what I asked, with policy. Policy doesn't answer questions, it absorbs them. People around me struggled to understand. They asked what went wrong. I didn't know how to answer. Nothing went wrong. That was the problem. There was no misconduct, no failure. No moment I could point to and say, that's where it happened. I replayed everything in my mind, every email, Every meeting, every word I had said, searching for a mistake, I found none. Because the outcome wasn't reactive. It was procedural. Once the cutoff was complete, the system stabilized. As systems do, my absence became normal. I realized something unsettling. The system didn't need me gone. It needed me irrelevant. Being cut off didn't feel like rejection. It felt like erasure. I still existed, but outside the structure that had defined my life, I lost more than access. I lost identity, purpose, continuity. People told me to move on, to start over, as if this were a job change. They didn't understand. This wasn't a transition, it was an exile. The hardest part was knowing no one had done anything wrong. There was no apology to offer, no accountability to demand. The book had been followed perfectly, and that perfection left no room for appeal. I began to understand something fundamental. Institutions don't sever people violently, they detach them cleanly. Clean detachment leaves no visible wound, just absence. At night, I wondered if trusting procedure had been my greatest mistake. If vigilance should have replaced faith. But how do you fight something that never breaks a rule? The cutoff reshaped my relationships, my confidence, my sense of agency. I hesitated before speaking, before committing, before trusting. Because once you've been cut off without explanation, every connection feels conditional. I still receive automated messages sometimes, system updates, general notices, reminders of a structure I no longer belong to. They feel like echoes. I don't hate the people who executed the process. They followed instructions. I don't hate the system. It functioned correctly. That's what terrifies me. Because it means this can happen to anyone who believes by the book also means with care. It doesn't. The book doesn't know who you are. It only knows where you fit. And when you no longer fit, it closes without hesitation. Everything was done by the book. And I was cut off